I feel very fortunate to be alive at this point in history, to be a witness. The attempt to pull us back into the past, that nostalgic urge is a futile endeavor. Time doesn't move in that direction.
In this episode, I sit down with Zackary Drucker. We get into the state of trans representation in film and television. She's in town receiving the Barrier Breaker Award from the Trans Filmmaker Summit, and I was just so honored to have her here on the show. Zackary, I'm so honored that you're here, to be honest. You're such a icon.
You're just trying to make me blush.
No, but I'm serious. Well, I mean, you're in Toronto receiving the Filmmaker Award at the Trans Filmmaker Summit.
Barrier Breaker
Award.
Yeah.
And it could not go to someone who is breaking more barriers than you.
Thank you.
I just think of
they're there to be obliterated, I believe.
We're 10 years from Transparent, and not to ignore your work sort of as an artist, but we're speaking specifically to film and television.
Yeah.
That's only 10 years ago, and look at all the stuff you've done. Framing Agnes, which you worked on with Chase Joynt, who has been on the show.
Yeah.
The Stroll with Kristen Lavelle, who's been on the show.
Yeah.
It's an incredible resume to have built in 10 years.
I feel really fortunate and very grateful for the stories that have come across my desk, and to have the opportunity to tell these stories and to be mid-swing in my own career and up for the challenge. It didn't come too soon. I got to figure my own stuff out in my 20s, and Transparent came along. I was 30.
I mean, that's kind of the right age, I feel, to start doing stuff. You need your 20s to figure out who you are.
I always say that everything before 30 was the prologue, and that my life really started at 30.
In terms of trans and non-binary people telling their own stories on film and television, it's incredible what's happening.
It is.
And what's happened in the last 10 years, and you were a big part of that. But we're not that far off from the Dallas Buyers Clubs and the Boys Don't Cries and the various other examples of cis people, sometimes thoughtfully, sometimes very problematically telling trans stories. But now I feel you think of the last couple of years, the People's Joker, I saw the TV Glow, there's so many examples finally, and I feel that's a reason to celebrate.
Absolutely.
What are your sort of thoughts on how everything is right now?
It's far beyond anything I imagined. And I started my transition in my life as a woman 20 years ago. George W. Bush was president. I was already a trans person when Dallas Buyers Club and Trans America and those films came out. And it was such a different time. It's hard to even detail the number of things that have changed.
Yeah.
But I always emphasize that progress moves alongside opposition. And we've reached this point where the backlash is so omnipresent. And the silver lining, of course, is our collectivity and the arrival of allies, because that did not exist 20 years ago. There were not cis people advocating for our rights at all. It was a small number of trans people banding together, and we didn't necessarily even have the support of the greater LGBT community. And that's the biggest transformation, is the folks adopting the cause and joining the struggle. And it takes that critical mass to push it forward.
I mean, absolutely, but I also feel you should be able to take some credit even for that happening. Because, I mean, for me, I'm a cis person. I grew up sort of in the 90s. I saw Boys Don't Cry. I saw Trans America. That was what my education was. And then in the last 10 years, because of a lot of the films and television projects that you've done, I feel my understanding has grown exponentially, and I know how to be an ally because of this sort of wave of trans people actually telling their own stories. So it's actually authentic, and I'm actually learning, I'm learning properly, as opposed to learning a cis person's idea of what a trans experience is. And that is to some degree part of your work.
Wow. It's a blessing to have the tools of storytelling at my disposal, and for all of us to be able to tell the stories. And I feel very fortunate to be alive at this point in history, to be a witness to all of this dynamic stuff that's happening. The attempt to pull us back into the past, that nostalgic urge, is a futile endeavor. Time doesn't move in that direction. Time wins.
Well, it's very inspiring to hear you speak so hopefully, just because, as you said, like there is a lot of focus on all of the negative, and with good reason. Like there is a lot of really negative things happening,
Yeah.
And your work is now part of a resistance in a way that it maybe wasn't 10 years ago in the same kind of way. But I do want to go back to the beginning of your work in film and television, which was transparent.
When one person in a family transitions, everyone transitions.
Who here wants to know my social media name? It's To Shell and Back. I'm a brand.
I feel like has gotten a bit of a bad rep only because of unfortunate things that have come out afterwards. But I just wanted to know about sort of your experience making that and how you look back on that 10 years later, because I'm assuming there was a lot of good.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
Okay,
It was like...
I want to like give Transparent back its legacy, because I feel like
Yes, please.
he ruined it for...
I love you for saying that. I made a commitment to not be bored. Growing up in Syracuse, there was...
Perfect commitment.
Yeah, there wasn't much going on, and I had to make my own fun. And there wasn't any kind of queer presence, or if there was, it was hard to find. And Transparent was not boring. Not for a moment. The high highs and the low lows. I mean, it was so dynamic. And it was magic. I mean, there's a kind of alchemy in filmmaking. And as a young trans person, I didn't ever imagine being a part of something legitimate, because you never saw trans people in any area of cultural production or just public life in general. You didn't go to a Starbucks and see a trans barista like you do today. Back then, there were really no options. Maybe nonprofits and the arts. So in some sense, I was thinking on a smaller scale at the time, and I thought I can eke out a space for myself in the art world and be a trans queerdo. But I didn't see myself being a part of mainstream television production. That just was not a possibility or an option. And I still love watching Transparent.
It was a good show.
It holds up.
And like it won Emmys. Like it was not the first time that kind of representation was that mainstream, but because of people like you, there was an authenticity to that show.
I mean, so many folks in front of the camera, behind the camera, the community was part of the making of it. Every episode, I call on crew members that we gave their first job in production, who to this day are like booked and busy, costume people and props people. And there's a whole generation of trans and non-binary people who have careers in the industry now. I always feel like whatever's happening behind the camera and whoever's in the room is contributing to the overall thing. Even if they're not visible and seen, there's an energetic kind of harnessing that happens. And the best work is made collaboratively, consciously, and with everybody feeling as though they can contribute their best craft.
And I wanted to get into sort of collaboration because in addition to making a lot of work yourself, you also have been very, I think, really notable in terms of the way that you've collaborated throughout your career. I'm thinking of The Stroll with Christian Lavelle. I'm thinking of, Framing Agnes with Chase Joynt. You seem to be very sort of community-minded in the way that you go about work. So I just was curious sort of how you approach that, and also just like what you think of the idea of mentorship and how important that is in this day and age, so that we can create more yous to come in and, you know what I mean?
Oh my God, I believe that God speaks to us through other people, and intergenerational bonding is just like paprika of my life. I mean, you just never know what you're gonna get. But I grew up in a very intergenerational environment. I grew up with a great-grandmother and her generation of immigrant elders they lived in, some of them into their hundreds.
Wow.
And so that was a value that was instilled in me as a young child.
And it's sort of circled down into the work that you do
Yeah.
now, which is wild.
So I moved to New York at 18 years old, and I sought out those legends in the community because I was like, somebody's got to tell me what's up. Somebody's got to teach me how to survive this mean world.
Yeah.
And hope is essential to our survival, to bring it back there.
Yeah.
And I believe that we are here to generate that for other people, and that our attitudes determine everything about our overall mental health.
Well, I mean, I know this is like said a lot in the last few years, at least, or the last year, that, you know, all we have is each other, all we have is community, because it's true. And it is something that I think we all need to sort of focus on in strong and thoughtful ways, because otherwise, you're right, then we'll lose that hope. And that hope is essential to our survival.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, we're still here for however many years, and we got to make it work, and we got to make it work for not just ourselves, but for everyone around us. And you are doing that in your work all the time. And it's very inspiring. And I really look up to you.
You're so sweet. And I agree completely. It is the antidote. We are the antidote.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been so lovely.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to take your photo
The pleasure's all mine.
so that you can join the lovely table. 2, 1.
You were such a sweetheart. Thank you.